Well, thanks for coming along, everyone. I really appreciate you coming as we think about this topic of heaven tonight. And I'm actually not going to speak as long as sometimes. That might be a relief. So, because I do want to allow a good chunk of time for questions. I imagine there will be a few. So I'm going to try and keep it to 30, 35 minutes or so. Then we'll have a break, and then I'll try and tackle any questions that people ask. And you may not agree with everything I say tonight, but I hope that it will be thought-provoking and encouraging, and it will stimulate you to sort of check out the Bible, see what it says for yourself, and that you'll find it really helpful. So I want to start. So imagine that you were planning to emigrate to Australia. You've resigned from your job, you sold the house, you bought the plane tickets, you're getting ready, and you're chatting to a friend, and they say to you, "What are your plans when you get there? It's a big move." And you say, "To be honest, I've never really thought about that. I don't know anything about Australia, really. I guess I'll just figure it out when I get there." Now, I don't know if that seems like a realistic conversation. Well, I guess for most of us, emigrating to Australia probably doesn't seem like a very realistic conversation. But hopefully you get the point. We would never treat emigrating like that, would we? We don't even treat going on holiday for a week like that. We know where we're going. We know what to expect. We know what we're going to do when we get there. But for many Christians, this is exactly how we treat heaven. This is how we treat heaven. And now your response to that might be, well, look, come on. These are two very different situations, aren't they? I can know about Australia because there's Google. And there are travel guides, and there are people who are there. I can ring them up. I can speak to them. And that's fair enough. I do take that point. There are differences. It is very true. We can't discover anything about heaven by our own intellectual research or our personal initiative or phoning a friend. But if we're given revelation about heaven by the one to whom everything belongs, including heaven, then of course there are things we can know. There are things we can know. In fact, if God has revealed things about heaven, then it would be quite arrogant, wouldn't it, to say we can't know anything about heaven. It's not possible. There's nothing we can know. If God has revealed things, that would be arrogant to say that. So what I'm hoping to do this evening is just to shed a bit of light, drawing on what God has revealed in his word, the Bible. It's the only reliable source about heaven. There's nowhere else we can go to find out. But God has revealed things about heaven in the Bible. So we can listen to God. He's the one that owns the place. So hopefully, as we spend this time, we will learn a bit more and we'll want to think a bit more about it for ourselves. There's obviously lots that we don't know. There's lots that I don't know. There's lots that we can't know. Deuteronomy 29:29 says, "The secret things belong to the Lord our God." There are secret things. But that verse also goes on to say, the things that are revealed belong to us and to our children forever. So some of what I say to you this evening will certainly be wrong. If I knew what bits they were, I'd not say them, but I don't know. I'll misunderstand things. I don't see anything. I don't see everything perfectly, of course. But Colossians 3:2 says, "Set your mind on things above, not on things on the earth." It's a biblical encouragement to think about heaven. In fact, God's will is that we long for our home. God wants us to long for our home. You probably know Hebrews 11. It's a great chapter. It's the hall of fame of faith. And it talks about the faithful in this way. It says, "As it is, they, the faithful, desire a better country, that is, a heavenly one." And what does God say in response to that? "Therefore, because they desire it, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared for them a city." So do you desire your home in heaven? Do you long for that? Perhaps you do already, and that's great, but maybe you don't. Maybe you're in the category of, I just don't really think about it very much. So why is it that we might not think about heaven very much? Well, I think there are basically 5 reasons, and they're going to pop up on the slide. There might be others, but I think these are I think these are the key reasons why we might not think very much about heaven. Firstly, we don't actually love and follow Jesus, in which case we have no basis at all for expecting we're going to go to heaven. That's the first reason. Secondly, we know that unless Jesus returns, we have to go through this inconvenient thing called death to get there. And death is an unpleasant thought. Thirdly, we're busy people. There are things we've got to do. There are jobs to be done. There's bills to be paid. There's life. Fourthly, it just doesn't seem very exciting or appealing. If we're honest, it doesn't really grip us very much. And finally, we think, is it really real? We've got a genuine faith, but it's a weak faith. We're not 100% convinced that we can really build the weight of our hopes upon it. We kind of hope it might be true, but we don't want to rest the weight of our hopes on it. So I want to come back to one at the end. We don't follow Jesus. A survey showed that in the USA, for every one person who believes they're going to hell, 120 people believe they're going to heaven. That's a recent survey. We need to be sure where we're going, and we need to be right in our convictions about that. There's a lot at stake, isn't there? Heaven or hell. So I want to come back to that at the end. I'm not really going to talk about two in great detail. Death is an enemy. Of course it is. It's a defeated enemy, but it is still an enemy. It's something unpleasant. And actually, having something unpleasant in front of us does take away anticipation, doesn't it? I think those of you who have got exams looming will kind of understand this. You've got the whole summer ahead of you, but first there are exams. And so you can't really look forward to the summer because you know you've got to go through the exams first. Death is a bit like that. We don't really like the prospect of death. So it's hard to think about what's on the other side of death. With point 3, I just want to make the observation that we do always find time for the things that we consider the most important. Have you noticed that? We say we don't have enough time. That's true to an extent, but we do always make time for the things we consider to be the most important. Now, God has said, set your mind on things above. So if we don't do that, if we never do that, we never think about heaven, we're simply saying God has got his priorities wrong. We know better. There are other things in our lives that are more important than setting our mind on heaven. But what I want to focus on really are points 4 and 5, that we can see more clearly tonight that heaven is both an exciting prospect and a real prospect, both of those things. And we're going to sort of tackle those things both together, really, because how can we strengthen weak faith? Well, we remind ourselves of who God is, how great he is, his promises, his character, that he'll never let us down. And how can we desire heaven more? By seeing more accurately what a wonderful place it is and what a wonderful prospect it is. Okay, so that's fine. That slide's done with now, really. So let's get stuck in. There's 2 main points I want to make tonight. And what I want to get across is that heaven has 2 main aspects, a wonderful person and a physical place. A wonderful person and a physical place. And the person is Jesus, and the place is wherever Jesus makes his home. Now, in terms of order of importance, of course, it's Jesus first, and the place second. Martin Luther said, I would rather be in hell with Christ than in heaven without him. That's quite a statement. I'd rather be in hell with Christ than in heaven without him. So Jesus is the most important person to think about, but because there's so many kind of unbiblical ideas of what heaven is like, we're actually going to think about the place first. Think about what heaven is like as a place, and then we're going to think about what being with Jesus in that place will be like. So heaven, the place. So here's a question. this is a rhetorical question, so I'm not asking you to shout out an answer, but do you think that heaven changes? Is heaven a place that changes? I don't know what answer is popping into your head as I ask that question. But the Bible clearly teaches that heaven does change. It's even that it's going to relocate in the future. It's not an eternal thing. Only God is the only one who is unchangeable, the same yesterday and today and forever. Heaven is a part of God's creation. It's a place. We read about angels entering heaven and leaving heaven. So heaven does change, and we're going to think about one of the ways in which it does change. Now, currently, right now, there is what it's helpful to call the present heaven. The present heaven. That's the heaven that exists right now at this moment. So if you're a believer in Jesus and you were to suddenly keel over, breathe your last, you're going to go to the present heaven. So Jesus said to the thief on the cross, didn't he? Today you'll be with me in paradise. He was referring to the present heaven. Now, but that's a temporary destination. Now, I'm not going to talk about that tonight. If you want to ask about that, you'll have to put it in the Q&A in a bit. What I want to talk about is the future heaven, the eternal heaven, or to give it an equally biblical name, the new earth. Now, this doesn't exist yet, but one day it will. It will. It's certain. Matt was talking about what was certain this morning. It is certain that one day the eternal heaven will exist, but not yet. Now, sometimes we can tend to think of heaven as up there somewhere. Harps, I don't know if you've ever thought about that, floating around on clouds. It can be the subject of Far Side cartoons. Someone sitting on a cloud, looking a bit dull and bored, saying, wish I brought a magazine. It's that sort of image. But heaven is going to be right here. Heaven is going to be here on a renewed earth. On the earth. The earth belongs to the Lord. The Lord has his hands on the earth. He's not going to let go of the earth. Those hands were pierced by nails, but he's not going to let go of the earth. It's his. Now, the devil's plan was to destroy God's place and to destroy God's people. But Jesus is not going to let the devil have this victory. That'd be kind of a victory. If God had to give up on the earth, well, the devil's kind of won. He's ruined it. It was good for nothing anymore. That's not going to happen. The earth is going to be renewed. It's not going to be destroyed. The biblical language is always around that. Redeem, restore, regenerate, resurrect, renew. It's all of those words. So our eternal home is going to be here on a new earth. And I think the Bible is very clear on this. If you look at Revelation 21, it talks about God's heavenly city coming down to earth. And it says the dwelling place of God will be with man on the earth. Ephesians 1:10 says that God's plan for the fullness of time is to bring all things in heaven and on earth together in Christ. So we are going to be physical people, body and soul, as we are now, but with renewed bodies, living forever on a physical earth. So we're not just spirit, we're spirit joined with body. Our body is as much a part of us as our spirit is. It's not just a temporary home. We are body and spirit. Death is kind of the unnatural parting of the spirit from the body. It separates what should be joined together. And I think this is really important to understand, because if we think of heaven as a sort of a non-physical, ethereal, spiritual sort of place, I think it's almost impossible to want to be there. We don't want to be in a place like that. And I think partly this is because we can only desire what we can imagine. You can't really desire something if you've got no idea what that might be like. And we can't imagine or look forward to living in a non-physical place. It's not natural for us. I mean, do you want to eat sand? Do you desire to eat sand? Does that sound like a great thing? Of course it doesn't. Trying to look forward to a non-physical heaven is a bit like trying to manufacture a desire in yourself to eat sand. It's not going to work. You're not going to want to do it. But what we do desire, if we really think about it, is a resurrected life with a resurrected body that works and will always work right here on a resurrected earth. That's what we want. And if you read the Bible looking for glimpses of what God has revealed about our home in heaven, you'll see he talks about it using the language of very real physical things that we can understand. They're very concrete ways in which he describes it. He talks about cities and gardens and countries and trees and feasts and communities, things like that. And we can appreciate what those things are like. And God wants us to picture those things when we think about heaven. Jesus said to his disciples, I'm going there to prepare a place for you. And I think one of the problems of looking forward to heaven is that we simply ignore or dismiss everything that the Bible tells us about it. But another problem is that we allow our knowledge of the way that things are right now in a fallen world, in a spoiled world, to prevent us from understanding what that will be like in a perfect world. So we might think, well, cities, they're dirty. They're not safe. They're full of crime. There's pickpockets. Gardens, well, they just grow weeds. You're always having to, things fall apart. You're always having to try and put it right. Countries go to war. Animals just kind of rip each other to pieces. And, well, we have get-togethers, but we just kind of squabble and fight. And communities, they kind of isolate. They don't come together. They split apart. And all of those things are true. But imagine what it would be like with all of the brokenness of this world removed. Imagine that. Just take the example of a feast. So Jesus said, didn't he? Many will sit down with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. What does that tell us? Well, that tells us that there is a continuity of who we are, our personhood. Many will sit down with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, real people who really existed on earth and now in heaven. So there's continuity. We are going to be changed so that we'll no longer sin or even desire to sin. But there's going to be continuity between my life now and my life in heaven. I mean, will I be Richard in heaven? Well, who else would I be? And if I'm not Richard in heaven, then it would make no sense to say that I've gone to heaven if I'm a different person with no connection between who I was on this earth. Now, I do believe that the Bible teaches that Jesus will also give me a new name, just as Jesus often used to do with his friends on earth. But it doesn't mean that I'll stop being Richard. And we'll get to meet Abraham. We'll remember who Abraham is. Now, we know some things about Abraham because God has told us some things, but we'll learn some new things about Abraham. We're going to find out other things about his life. Can you imagine looking forward to a feast where there's no social anxiety at all? There's no one feeling left out. There is fantastic food, but we're not going to have to worry about thickening arteries and heart disease. And there's joyful conversation, but there's no one that gets on your nerves. Can you imagine a feast like that? Now, maybe that's hard for you to imagine because your experience of feasts has always had kind of a negative feel to it. But one day, a feast like that, many feasts like that, will be a reality for those who trust in Jesus. You're not too tired to enjoy it. There's nowhere else you'd rather be. There's no one who's wishing you weren't there. All of those things. And I'm sure to some extent we have all enjoyed food in the company of others, haven't we? And we have. But typically, there's something that spoils it. Maybe there's someone there that you struggle with. Or even just that nagging feeling that tomorrow you've got to get up and you've got to go to work. There's kind of always something that hangs over even the most joyful of gatherings. But in heaven, the feasts, they're going to be amazing because there won't be anything that overshadows the joy of being there with the people you love, enjoying amazing food. That's going to be incredible. And heaven will be this place of endless new excitement. So there'll always be things to discover. There'll always be exciting things to do, but also a place where we can rest and just know peace and satisfaction. It won't always be the same. Why would it be? Our lives now are not always the same. Heaven's not some sort of just a vague blur. There'll be activity and rest and excitement and peace, all sorts of things. Because as created beings, our desire for pleasure, our experience of joy, it's all given to us by God. He made us with the capability to be exhilarated. Who invented adrenaline? Who invented dopamine? It's the Lord who's given us these things. Psalm 16 verse 11 says, "In your presence there is fullness of joy. At your right hand are pleasures forevermore." God's created us with a sense of humour. Are we going to lose that in heaven? Of course not. Many of you know Fee. She's not here tonight. Is Fee not going to tell jokes in heaven? Of course she's going to tell jokes, and we'll laugh as we've never laughed before. But it will never be unkind humour or dirty humour or humour at the expense of other people that makes them marginalised and left out. It won't be that kind of humour, but God's created a sense of humour. We're not going to lose that when we go to be with him. So I want you to think about those moments on earth where you think, this has been a little taste of heaven. And use that to fuel your imaginations as to what it's going to be like when all the brokenness and the fallenness and the sad things are gone. There won't be anything to spoil the good things that God has prepared for those who love him. So we can think about coming together for a party with those we love. That's a good thing to think about. But maybe just enjoying a walk in the countryside with a close friend. Or think about working as part of a team where you work hard. You accomplish something that feels so satisfying. You've come together. It's worked. You've done it. Maybe you feel tired. In heaven, we may feel tired, but there'll always be opportunity to rest. Could Adam and Eve have felt tired in the garden? Maybe. I don't think tiredness itself is a bad thing necessarily. And we're not limited by a fear of failure or by frustrations or negativity by ourselves or others, or we'll never have a sense that it's all a bit pointless or purposeless. Why would we not look forward to this? Why is that not good to think about? Imagine what the scenery will be like. Do we think that God has run out of ideas when he's created the world that we see right now? Is that the limits of his ability? How many colours will there be in heaven? Colours that right now we can't imagine because we've never seen them. But why would God not be able to create more colours? Heaven will be vibrant, dynamic, exciting. Perhaps, Matt was talking about this morning of a trip up into space. Perhaps we will be able to travel to other planets. Why not? It's certainly a possibility. Maybe we'll be able to develop those for the glory of God in a way that we can't now because we're more limited. Perhaps you've always dreamed of something. A good thing, but it seems like in this life, for whatever reason, that dream is never going to happen. Maybe that dream in heaven finds its fulfillment. Who knows what good things God has prepared for those who love him. Maybe we'll find that even what we think are our disappointed dreams will, in some sense, find their fulfillment in heaven. So that's heaven. That's heaven, the place. Now, words can't do it justice. It will be better than anything we can imagine. I'm limited by my imagination, you are limited by yours. But it will be physical, and we will enjoy it with perfect bodies that will never fade and never die. But even more important than the place will be the person. The person who's at the centre of heaven, Jesus. Jesus, our Saviour, our Redeemer, our Lord. And that's really the second point I want to emphasise this evening. The most amazing thing about heaven will be that we will see Jesus. We'll see Jesus. He will be our most intimate friend, the one who literally died for us so we can be with him in his place. Revelation 22 verse 4 says, we will see his face. Now, can we grasp the full extent of what that's going to be like? Of course we can't. But he will be the one who welcomes us to his home, which is going to become our home. We're going to hear those words, well done, good and faithful servant. Enter into the joy of your Lord. What is it that you most admire in other people? Have a think about that for a moment. What is it that we admire? Perhaps it's their sporting ability, their musical ability, their magnetic personality, the way that they walk into a room and the room just kind of lights up because they're there. Maybe the fact that they're such fun to be with. Jesus is the source of every good thing that you've ever appreciated about any other person. That came from Jesus. Who is more talented, interesting, fascinating, or fun to be with than Jesus? There's no one else like him. But the amazing thing is that he has chosen us to be with him. Incredibly, he will delight to spend time with us. Can you imagine that? So if you're a keen gardener, perhaps you'll have a conversation with Jesus about his creative genius in creating not just the things that you know on this earth, but the things that you see on the new earth. Perhaps together with Jesus, you'll design some beautiful garden with some new hybrid roses. Perhaps you'll secretly plan and design a garden just for Jesus to enjoy with you. And you'll see his delight as you show him this garden. And he takes delight in it because he takes delight in you. Imagine what that would be like. Or if you're an artist, perhaps you create something that is a celebration of your love for Jesus. Perhaps you'll paint him a picture. He'll treasure it. And those of us who are parents, we treasure things that our children do for us, don't we? He'll be like that. He will take delight in what we do. Imagine spending time one-to-one with Jesus. Perhaps we'll ask him about those things that have always puzzled us about our life. Why was it he let you experience that particular struggle? Why was it that hung over you for what felt like forever? Why did he take your loved one away when he did? Perhaps you'll sit there with your previously lost loved one, with Jesus, while he helps you to understand the purpose behind the pain that you went through. Sometimes on earth, we doubt his love, don't we? But in heaven, we'll always see Jesus' love clearly. I wonder what Jesus will show each of us that will make sense of those difficult times that we went through while we were on earth. I think we'll literally weep with joy as he shows us the tapestry of our life from the right side up. Not the underneath side where it's all messy and funny threads that don't join together and it doesn't make sense to us. but the finished product, seen from above. The Bible says there'll be no tears in heaven. Personally, I don't think that includes tears of joy. I personally think we might still have tear ducts, but they'll only have a joyful purpose, not a sad purpose. I wonder what things you'll particularly enjoy doing with Jesus. Because he has created you as you are for a reason. There's something about you that will give Jesus particular pleasure. We're all unique, aren't we? So imagine just talking face to face with Jesus, laughing with him, eating with him, worshipping him, sometimes perhaps just being together. You know how you can be with someone that you really love, and sometimes you don't need words, do you? You just sit there, you enjoy their company, they enjoy your company. You don't have to make conversation. It's just totally, naturally together, totally at peace. That would be amazing. And Revelation chapter 2 talks about Jesus giving individuals a white stone with a new name written on it. And I wonder, there's different theories about what that new name means, but I wonder if that new name is one that captures something personal about us that Jesus particularly notices and enjoys and loves. Something about our uniqueness, why we are the way we are. And in heaven, we'll both be able to enjoy God's good gifts and enjoy God himself. They're not in conflict with each other. I think sometimes people say, in heaven, we should only delight in God, as if there's a limitation. But it is true that on this fallen earth, sometimes we can take God's good gifts and they can become more important to them than God is. They can become idolatrous in some way. But that's not going to be true in heaven. In heaven, everything will be in its right place. We'll enjoy God's good gifts with thankfulness to the one who gave them to us. And he will take pleasure in our enjoyment of them. I mean, think back to the Garden of Eden. Before the fall, Adam delighted in Eve, didn't he? That was clear. Was God annoyed about that? Did God say, well, hang on, you should only be delighting in me? No. He took joy in the fact that Adam delighted in Eve. God took pleasure in Adam's pleasure, just as we do. If we give someone a gift, we want them to enjoy the gift. Yes, we want them to appreciate that it came from us, but we don't want to be the centre of attention. We want them to be able to enjoy the gift. So in heaven, our relationship with Jesus will be absolutely the best of all. But we will enjoy other relationships too, with thankfulness to the one who has given us those relationships to enjoy. Well, I've tried to present a picture of heaven that sounds good, that feels exciting. And I'm well aware of my limitations, and I know that what I've described falls short of just how wonderful it's going to be. But let your imaginations run. Look in the Bible about how the clues that God gives us to what heaven is like. Imagine those things. Imagine them without the brokenness of the world. Imagine them without any overshadowing that comes to spoil them. But as we come towards a time of Q&A, I do want us to think, or if you're watching online, I want us to think, are we sure that our place in heaven is guaranteed? Are we sure about that? You may be someone who doesn't think about heaven very much because you're simply hoping for the best. You're simply hoping that everything will just work out okay. But Jesus said these sobering words, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father except through me. So whether you're here or watching online, I want to plead with us all to recognise that heaven is not our natural home. It's not our default destination. Our default destination is the outer darkness of hell, shut out from the glories of God's presence, shut out from the glories of his kingdom, isolated, lonely, despairing, nothing good, and no hope for the future. So you may be someone who thinks that the quality of your moral deeds or your intellectual ability means that you can safely ignore the question of heaven and be confident that if there is such a place, you'll definitely be welcomed in. But that is simply not true. It's not true. Heaven is God's place, and he is the one that gets to set the terms of entrance. And he's made it clear that trust in Jesus alone and his death on the cross in our place is the only way in which our record of sins can be cleared and our place can be guaranteed. If that's not you, I would urge you to think seriously about the certainty of death and the reality of what lies beyond. But for those who've trusted in Jesus, we can take God's promises to the bank. We can absolutely rely on them. Heaven will be the place where we learn what the fullness of human life really looks like. Warmth of relationships, excitement, peace, laughter, celebration, and no fear that the dream will end, unexpected tragedy will break in, and that one day it will all be over. No fear of that at all. So let's live with a longing for this place. Let's think about it. Let's let it spur us on. Let's let it fill our dreams, that we have a certain hope in the glorious future that we have with Jesus. Thank you. I can say this bit, Matt. So we're going to break for coffee now. So have a 10-minute break, have a drink, and scribble down your questions. Obviously, I can't promise I can answer them all, but I'll have a crack. So if you've got questions, if there's things that I haven't covered, which inevitably there will be, it's such a big topic. But while you have a coffee, just scribble down some questions on the bits of paper here, and then we'll come back together in about 10 minutes and we'll rattle through them as much as we can. So thank you for coming along. I hope that's been stimulating and encouraging, and look forward to hearing the questions that you have shortly. Thank you. So as I thought, there's quite a stash, So I'll try and some of these have multiple questions on. So I'll obviously try and answer them as best I can. Be gentle with me if I can't give a good answer to some of these. And obviously, it's necessarily going to have to be relatively brief, just so we get through them all. But in no particular order. So the first question is, since God will make a perfect place for us to be forever and perfect for us to live there and no Satan, why not do this first time round? That's a big question, isn't it? Why not do this first time round? Why let us go through this experience of fall, of brokenness, of sin, of suffering? And I have to say that I don't think the Bible gives us a definitive answer to that. I don't think we can just look up a verse and say, well, the answer's here. I think what I would say is that because God has done what he's done, and we have gone through this brokenness, we have gone through this fall, we're aware of our sin, we've been rescued, I think we can be sure that because of that, we will see more of God's wonderful love, forgiveness, and grace and mercy. If he'd just taken us to a wonderful place where we live forever, well, we would still be thankful for that, I'm sure, but we would never have known what it's like to have been forgiven by a holy God, to have our sins washed away because Jesus paid that price. So we're going to see the wonderful kindness and forgiveness and love of God more clearly because of the way he has done it than if he had just taken us straight to be in a wonderful place from the very start. So I hope that's of some help for that question. The second one is, I always consider heaven a place of worship. Isn't all all other activities second best to this. And I would say, yes, all of heaven will be worship, but I think we will be able to worship the Lord even as we enjoy the good things that he gives. So I think we'll be able to go for a walk in the countryside with a friend and worship the Lord as we are so thankful for the fact that we can do this. And he's given us this place, and he's the future that we have is because of him. It's not that, well, when we're doing other things we can't be worshipping. We are to worship him now with everything that we do. So it's possible right now to enjoy a good cup of coffee and worship the Lord with thankfulness because of what he's done for us. So I think there will be times when absolutely our attention is 100% focused on the one who loved us and gave himself for us. And that will be very much the centre. But there'll also be times when we just enjoy doing other things with thankfulness to the wonderful God who has given us those things to enjoy. So I hope that's helpful for that one. Will there be sleep and night in heaven? That's a good question. And again, I'm not sure I can definitively answer that, but I would say, well, did Adam and Eve sleep pre-fall? I would say there was day and night pre-fall. So I think there will be an expectation that they would have. Is sleep a bad thing? I think sleep is a wonderful thing. So could it be possible that we'll get tired in heaven? I think we can get tired in heaven. Why not? I don't think tiredness is a bad thing. It won't be the sort of tiredness that is negative or crippling. But if we've had a very busy day doing something amazing, or just a very active day, perhaps we could get tired and enjoy wonderful sleep. Maybe sleep would remind us that even in heaven we are dependent beings. We're not independent beings. We'll always be dependent on God. He is the only one who is self-sufficient and independent. Even in heaven, we'll be depending on him, and maybe sleep will just be a good reminder of that. And will there be night in heaven? Well, I think yes. I mean, the heavens declare the glories of God, right? That's Psalm 19. If there was no night in heaven, I'm not sure the new heavens could declare the glories of God, because we wouldn't get to see them very well. So I would think certainly there will be places where, why would there not be night? I mean, it talks about the city of God needing no light. So it could be that within the city, there will be some places where that the light is more continual. But I don't see why there wouldn't be regions where things got dark. And I personally think that would be a good thing. And night wouldn't bring the fears that it does now. Night now can be dangerous, can't it? Robbers, bandits, smuggers, whatever. But I'm sure there'll be places where we can appreciate the glories of the heavens even more wonderfully than we can see them now. And perhaps that would involve night. But as I say, I think there probably are mixed views on that, and I can't definitively prove it one way or the other. If we'll be physical in heaven, and Jesus too, can we expect to spend one-to-one time with him if there are so many people? That's a great question. And I don't know quite how that would work. I mean, maybe he will have physical abilities that we don't. So maybe it will be possible in some senses for Jesus to be in more than one place at one time. Maybe it would be possible for us to communicate with Jesus, even if he's not physically with us. I don't know. But I think we can be certain that we're not going to be in heaven thinking, oh, if only I had a bit more access to Jesus. I last saw him 1,000 years ago. I put myself in the ballot, but I haven't been pulled out for ages. So I think we'll be getting access to Jesus. Exactly how that is done, I don't know. But I'm sure God can work that out. What age will I be when I get to heaven? The same as on earth when I die. Well, for those who die in extreme old age, I guess they're hoping they probably won't be that age in their resurrected body. I think we will have bodies that are perfectly strong, that never fade. So will we have, I don't know. I mean, when do people reach physical peak? 30s? Maybe we'll have bodies that will be kind of round about 30s. I mean, who knows? I mean, it's even possible that maybe we would perceive people in different ways. Would our children always look younger to us? I don't know. I'm not sure. I think all we can safely say is that we'll be of an age when we can enjoy the wonderful bodies that have been given to us. It could be that everyone is kind of a similar age, but I can't answer that question definitively. Sorry. I often wonder whether people we love who are now in the present heaven can see what we're doing. What do you think? I think they probably can. So people who have died and gone to glory, will they be taking an interest in what's happening on earth? Well, if you look in the book of Revelation, you can obviously see those who have been martyred in heaven who are crying out, "How long, O Lord, until you judge those who have martyred us?" So there seems to be an awareness that there are some things that need to happen that haven't happened yet. I think that would be wonderful. I mean, Jesus obviously knows what's happening on earth, and he's interceding for his people, as we thought about this morning. Why would perhaps those who've gone to the present heaven, perhaps we in some way can intercede for those who we still love on earth, who've not yet put their trust in Jesus, or they're going through difficult things. I think we could well have an awareness of those things, and we could probably see what God is doing as he brings about the resolution to some of those things. So I can't prove that one way or the other, but I would personally think that those who are in the present heaven would have an awareness of what's going on earth. Would that mean that they're unhappy about it? Well, I mean, it's interesting that the promise of no more tears is only really given for the eternal heaven. So it's is Jesus sorrowful for the suffering that he sees on earth right now? I think of course he is. Jesus' people are being hurt. Does Jesus care about that? Of course he does. Now, if we're in heaven, the present heaven with Jesus, would we care about those things? I'm sure we would. We would have a confidence that everything is going to be worked out, so we wouldn't be uncertain as to what the future was going to be. But would we care about those things? Well, we would, wouldn't we? And perhaps there would be an element of longing, it's still longing in that. How long, O Lord? That's what the martyrs cry out. How long before everything is brought to its fulfillment? So perhaps there would be an element of that in the present heaven. Should we expect continuance with Eden, given that was the previous perfect place? So, vegans, will we all be them? Clothes, will we wear them? Well, it's interesting that, again, Revelation, talking about the present heaven, talks about the martyrs being clothed in white robes. So maybe, that could be purely symbolic language, or it could be a sense in which even in the present heaven, there are some clothes. I suppose we know in heaven in the present heaven, people haven't received their final resurrected bodies, but it's possible that they have some sort of body. That's not impossible. And the fact that they're wearing clothes is perhaps suggestive that there would be still clothes in the eternal heaven. Vegans, well, I think we can certainly say there wouldn't be, in heaven, there's not going to be kind of animal death. I think that's clear. So would we eat meat that we get from killing animals? No, I don't think we would. Is God able to produce something that is a food that is even better than meat, that doesn't involve, for those of us that like meat, by the way, that doesn't involve killing animals? Yes, of course he could. So it could be that we'll be eating something that, in some sense, in fact, Isaiah talks about, I'll prepare a feast of the best of meats and the finest of wines. Now, that doesn't have to necessarily mean literal meat, but it basically means it's going to be amazing food. Could God provide amazing food that doesn't require animals to die? Well, of course he could. And I'm sure it will be absolutely fantastic. So in that sense, yes, there will be, we're not going to be hunting animals for our food in heaven, I'm sure of that. The people grow up, age in heaven. Will we change while we're there? We will certainly change in the sense that heaven is going to be a place where we continually learn. So we're obviously not going to know everything in heaven, because only God knows everything. So heaven will be a place where we will discover new things about God, about the world, about other people, about the universe. So in that sense, we will certainly change, because we will continually be growing and developing. Will we get older? And again, perhaps, could we change physically in appearance as we grow in more understanding and wisdom? It's possible. I don't think we're going to look old. I think that's, one thing we can say. We're aware of what it looks like as our bodies start to degrade. If we change, it's not going to be a degradation. It would only be an upward trajectory. Do infants' children grow up in heaven, or do they stay the same as when they went? I don't know about that. It's possible that for those who have lost children, they would have the gift of seeing those children grow up to adulthood in heaven. That's possible, isn't it? Or it's possible that when we arrive in heaven, those children have already attained maturity. I think either of those things could be the case. And again, I can't be definitively certain on that. So maybe those who have lost children, they would get to see they would get to see, because God is just so kind, isn't he? If you think, well, I never got to see, I lost a child in the womb, or I lost a child in infancy, I never got to see them grow up. Perhaps God in his kindness would allow that to happen. That would be an amazing thing, wouldn't it? So you actually get to see your lost loved one grow up after all. Won't heaven be a bit crowded from the beginning, Abraham, to the end of the earth? Well, even if the new earth is the same size as this one, it's pretty big. I mean, most of this earth is kind of desert or uninhabitable or ocean, so I don't think there's any real shortage of space, even if every person that had ever lived on the planet was in the new heaven. Don't forget also that God could also make the new earth larger. He could also make it structurally different. I mean, one of the things in the book of Revelation, it talks about this amazing city. I don't know if you've looked at the city, but it's basically a cube, 14,000 miles in each direction, and 1,400 miles in each direction, and 1,400 miles high. Now, is that symbolic language? Well, it could be, but it could be a very big city, which architecturally has kind of the most amazing multi-level kind of internal parks and gardens and fountains. It could be the most amazing place that is orders of magnitude bigger than any city we've experienced up to now. So I don't think there'll be any shortage of space. Jesus said, in my Father's house there were many rooms. There's an image of spaciousness, not, well, I'm going to cram you guys all in somewhere, but it will be amazing. But exactly how that works, I'm not sure. Oh, will I see my baby that died? Well, I believe in God's kindness, whoever that is, you will see your baby that died. I think it's clear, isn't it, that Jesus has a particular love for children, doesn't he? I think we see that time and time again. Let the little children come to me. We know that no one deserves to be in heaven. We know that through Adam, there is no true innocent human being, but we know that God is amazingly kind, and I can't prove this biblically, but I'm sure that Jesus, in his great kindness, takes infants, little children, unborn babies to be with him in glory, and I think we'll just be amazed at his goodness as we see what he's done with those who are very little. So yeah, I would be very, very hopeful about that. What does it mean to store up treasure in heaven? I think what does that mean? Well, that means that recognises that what we do now really matters. And it gives enormous significance to everything that we do. I mean, Jesus said, didn't he, if you give someone a cup of cold water in my name, you'll by no means lose your reward. Now, what does he mean by that? Well, we know that heaven is a gift. So in that sense, going to heaven is never a reward for our works. That's a free gift of God's grace. But Jesus, it does mean that the things that we do for him are noted and will be rewarded. I mean, if you look at all of the parables about you've been given this opportunity, you've been faithful in a little thing, I'm going to set you over many things or 10 kingdoms, you get this impression that Jesus rewards people disproportionately for the small acts of service that we do now. So I think that's what having treasures in heaven means. It means serve him faithfully now, and God is no man's debtor. You'll be amazed at what kindness God will pour out to you, not because he has to, but because he loves to reward those who have served him on earth. So I think that's what it means, and to have our minds set on those things, to believe that the things that we do really do matter. and take those opportunities to love God and serve others. Will we age in heaven? I think, I've dealt with that one. What age will we be when we get there? Will there be babies, children, unborn children in heaven? I think I've answered that, hopefully. And will there be oceans? So that's probably referring to the fact that something in the book of Revelation where it says, and there'll be no more sea. And people think, oh, that's a shame. No surfing, no oceans, no bodies of water. But I think that is, the sea is a picture of chaos, danger, sort of, I suppose the sea in the Bible poetically is often a picture of, out of control forces of evil, the beast comes out of the ocean, it's all of that. But I'm sure there'll be bodies of water, and I'm sure they'll be incredibly beautiful. Maybe there'll be a new Lake Louise. If any of you have seen Lake Louise in Canada, stunningly beautiful lake. Will there be things like that in heaven? I'm sure there will. Why would there not be oceans? I can't think of any reason, really. The natural world will be far more beautiful than the natural world that we see now. This world is beautiful. It's broken but beautiful. Imagine what the new earth is going to look like. We're not going to be there thinking, oh, if only there was a few more bodies of water, it'd be much nicer. Although there won't be marriage, will there be different types of relationships? I think there will. So, we have people on earth that we particularly love, don't we? Both not just marriage, but outside of marriage. Why would it be the case? It's not that there will be people in heaven that we don't love, but do we have to love everyone the same? I don't think we do. I think there might be people that we're particularly close to, that we particularly enjoy spending time with, shared interests. We're going to have different interests, aren't we? We don't all like the same things now. Why would we all like the same things in heaven? So if you find, I'm going to be part of a little group of people that really love maths, and we're going to do fun maths stuff together, and we're going to talk to Jesus about this amazing maths thing that you've invented. Tell us more about it. Probably not everyone is going to be in that group, I suspect, but I'm sure there will be different types of relationships that we can enjoy. If someone, and of course, those who have been in our family, obviously in heaven, I'm not going to be married to Catherine because there is no marriage in heaven. But would she not be a particular friend? Of course she's going to be a particular friend. We'll have spent most of our lives together. So your children or your parents, you're going to have a particular bond with them because they're forever your children. They were your parents. So you've got that connection. But there'll be lots of new friendships and relationships as well. If someone has caused us real harm in this world but has repented and gone to heaven, would we recognise them and what they have done? I think God in his kindness will cover over some of those things so that they don't cause us pain, but I think we will have continuity of memories, so we will remember our life on earth. We'll probably remember more about our lives on earth, actually, than we're capable of remembering now, but not in a way that causes us or anyone else pain. So, in fact, I think we would be able in heaven to take delight in the fact that the Lord had forgiven them and that the harms that had been done had been paid for by Jesus and his death on the cross, and we can now connect in a way that would have seemed unimaginable on earth. Now, I know for some that is going to be very, very hard to imagine. So I don't want that to be a cause of pain to anyone, but I think the Lord is capable of, by his grace, covering over things that have been done against us for those who have repented and put their trust in Jesus. I recognise that's a difficult question, and it could be that God in his mercy does block some things out because they would be too painful. So he is able to do that, just in the same way that we block things out now that are too difficult for us to think about. So he could do that in his kindness if he recognised it would be too hard for someone to remember that. (2 Peter 3:12) says about the heavens being destroyed by fire. Will God make everything new from scratch, or is there some part of heaven on earth which will continue? So I'm going to finish by 5:30, by the way. If you have had enough of questions and want to run for the door, then honestly, that's fine. But I will try and finish by 5:30. So this is referring to something that 2 Peter 3 verse 12 says, the day of the Lord will come like a thief, and then the heavens will pass away with a roar, and the heavenly bodies will be burned up and dissolved, and the earth and the works that are done on it will be exposed. So what I understand that to mean is that part of the process of renewal. I mean, earlier on in 2 Peter 3, it talks about the flood, and it talks about the world perishing in the flood. Now, in one sense, the world didn't perish in the flood. I mean, the world was still there, but the flood destroyed everything, and there was a fresh start. So I think when it talks about the heavens passing away with the roar, the earth and the works that are done on it will be exposed, or some translations burned up, some translations found or exposed. I think it's a sense of renewal. So I don't think it's that the earth will be completely destroyed and gone. It will be changed in a way that brings it to its new eternal state. So again, the process of renewal, purification, rather than the process of annihilation. I don't think we should read that verse as annihilation. Babies and young children, we've talked about that. Millions of people in heaven, how will Jesus have time for us all? I think we've talked about that. And will we remember and know our loved ones? Definitely. I mean, many will sit down with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. They're real people that we will know. It's not people that once were. I mean, how does that work? I'm not quite sure. I mean, the Mount of Transfiguration, the disciples seemed to know that it was Moses and Elijah. How did they know? Maybe there was something in them that they just were able to recognize that is who they were. So maybe God can just allow us to recognize. We look over and we see, oh, that's Adam. How did I know that? Well, I don't know. Maybe I just knew that. Maybe that was just something that God enabled me to know. But continuity of our personhood is very important. So yes, I believe we will. Will we remember anything from earth? Yes, I believe we will, but not in a way that causes us heartache and pain. Again, that can be difficult for some to, how could I not remember? If I remember that, how could that not cause me great pain? I think God in his kindness will just make it possible for our memories, even difficult memories, to be seen in the light of his love and his grace, and the fact that we would understand much more than we do now about why we went through that particular experience. Will there be many religions in heaven? No. I mean, so those in heaven will be in heaven because they have trusted in the Lord Jesus. Could there be differences? Could there be theological differences in heaven? Possibly, in the sense that we're going to be learning more about the Lord Jesus and about the Lord. We're not going to arrive in heaven. Well, we're never going to know everything about him because he's infinite. So I think it's Ephesians talks about in the coming ages, he will reveal. So he's going to show us more about himself and his love. So there could be other people that have reached a further point of understanding than we have, but we're not going to fall out about those things. So, in heaven, we might be like, oh, okay, I get that now. I never really saw that before, but thank you, Luther, for explaining that to me, or whoever it is. But not different religions in the sense that there are now. If heaven is going to be on the new earth, where will hell be? I don't know where hell would be. But I think that will be in another physical part of the universe. It could even be under the earth, possibly. But we're not told exactly where hell would be. There's a somewhat puzzling parable where there's a conversation between the rich man who's gone to hell and Lazarus who's in heaven. It's difficult to know exactly what to make of that. Obviously, I don't think there's any other place where it's expected that there's communication between heaven and hell, so I don't think that would be the case. But I think hell will be separate in some sense to the new earth, to heaven. Will people have different jobs in heaven? I would have thought so, because again, there'll be different interests, there'll be different skills. So not everyone is going to have the same skill. If you're a keen gardener now, you might be doing something that involves gardening. If you're not a keen gardener, you probably wouldn't. Obviously, there are some jobs that won't exist, thankfully, doctors, dentists, lawyers. So there are some things that won't be needed anymore. But maybe teachers would be needed, because we'll still be learners. So I would have thought people would have different jobs because we have different interests. There are different things we enjoy. So there are going to be different ways in heaven that we can use those gifts and interests to glorify God in the continuing development of the new heaven and the new earth. As I say, heaven isn't going to be a static place. So Adam and Eve in a perfect world were told, I put you here in the garden, now go out and steward the earth and make it bear fruit, make it glorify God. So I would see in heaven that there will still be opportunities for exciting jobs to be done, but without the burdensome, wearying, frustrating nature of work that is part of the fall. So we won't have that, thankfully. How old will we be in heaven and earth? I think we've answered that one. Would there be babies? Any thoughts on Sheol, Hades, and purgatory? So Sheol and Hades are kind of Old Testament words. So I think the doctrine of heaven and hell becomes clearer as you read through the Bible. So in the Old Testament, these words like Sheol and Hades are kind of used they can be used in a positive or a negative sense. Sheol can just be the place of the dead in a sort of fairly neutral sense. Obviously, as we go into the New Testament, then there becomes more clarity about hell as a place and heaven as a place. Jesus speaks a lot about both of those things. Purgatory, I obviously don't want to fall out with my brother over here, but purgatory is a place where I can't see biblical evidence for it as a place. I recognise there are different views on that, but I would believe that through faith in the Lord Jesus, my sins are paid for. I go, today you'll be with me in paradise, Jesus said to the thief on the cross. Clearly someone who hadn't led a particularly good life, who didn't really have much time to put anything right, and yet Jesus forgave him and took him that day to be in paradise, the present heaven, with him. So I think that's everything. Thank you very much for all those questions. If you feel I've answered them badly, I'm sorry, but come and grab me afterwards if you would like to have another crack at it. But I do appreciate you coming along. Thank you so much for all the questions you've asked, and I hope that's been of some help to you all. Thank you.